From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. Today we're talking about politics and money. Election season is officially underway with some presidential debates already under our belt and cities and towns preparing to hold their preliminary elections. And that's where 22 News in Focus comes in today. Today we'll talk about the races to keep an eye on and what you need to know before you head to the polls. Then later, most candidates will try to convince you on their economic policies. So today we'll talk about where we stand now. We'll talk to financial experts about the possibility of interest rates going up and what that means to homeowners and credit card and loan borrowers. We'll also dig deeper into the real estate market and financial market for college students who are getting their finances together now for the upcoming school year. We have a lot to get to, but first we begin today with political consultant Tony Signoli. Thank you so much for being here. I know You've been incredibly busy over the last few weeks with everything going on. We already had one presidential debate under our belt, at least, well, we technically had two actually. You know, we have such a huge field of candidates right now. First off, have you ever seen such a large field for the GOP?
You know, not like this, not official, not spending money, not on the ground, actually actively seeking the nomination of their party, no.
Let me talk about how early on this is right now, because we're a year out from, we're several months away from the primary. We're a year out from when we're going to even really start thinking about going to the polls. Have you ever seen it start this really so strong?
Quietly behind the scenes, the strategy, the work that goes on, certainly I've seen that 2 and 3 years ahead of time even. It's the presidency. It's such a huge endeavor. But I've never seen it this public with the public as tuned in. 28 million people tuning into a debate on an August summer night. That's incomprehensible. It's unheard of. That's more people than watched the 7th game of the World Series last year. Wow. That's stunning. Yeah.
So what is it? Why are so many people tuned in right now? Is this really the Trump factor, or do people really care more about politics?
From the 3 pollsters that we've got the good fortune to have significant information from, not just the horse race questions and the beauty race as to who's out in front or not, we're seeing a couple of different things. One, people are more concerned about the future. There's a new group of voters, and it's the middle class, who are saying, where do I fit into everything? And they're tuning in a little bit more because of other issues. It could be Iran, and it could certainly be the economy that's there. But the fast, honest, straightforward answer, and some people will hate hearing it, Donald Trump. That's the bottom line. It's Trump that's driven all of this at this point. It's a political anomaly and media anomaly that we've never seen in politics ever before.
So do you see all of these candidates, and I'm including Trump in this, as realistic candidates who are going to continue and go the entire length up until the primary? Do you think we're going to start seeing people drop out? How do you think this is going to play out?
You know, Rick Perry's already started to retreat. He's pulling out of South Carolina. He stopped his political operation, stopped paying his people there. In addition, Chris Christie, who, like Babe Ruth, said, New Hampshire's going to be it for me. He pointed out there like Ruth did and said, I'm going to hit the home run. He's dropped like a stone in just 2 weeks' time. That air that he needed to be the person who's told it like it is. Donald Trump's eating all of that up, and what Donald didn't eat, Ted Cruz has got, and Rand Paul is trying to grab. So we see Christie getting out probably sooner rather than later. He's just not going to have the money to compete in New Hampshire. That's the other thing. This early piece, as you're saying, it's so early. We've never seen them have to spend money the way they are right now. And it's not just the Republicans. The world changed this week between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. She will have to spend in New Hampshire right now, given the numbers that have just come out in the Franklin Pierce University poll, where he is doing so well by comparison to her.
So this is going to be an expensive campaign, really.
Absolutely.
Starting out this early, it gets that costly.
In the same way that a few weeks ago we had predicted that Kasich would be a player, that he would come from nowhere, from the back of the pack a few weeks ago, and we were right on that with the polling and whatnot. We can say that this is a $2 billion presidential race, and a good chunk of that $2 billion could just be Hillary Clinton alone and Jeb Bush, who will be in this for the long haul. Both of them, despite what their numbers are right now in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and nationally, they've got the organizations, they've got the money to stand and withstand all the hits that are coming to both of them right now. Mediocre performance on Bush's part in a debate, and Hillary certainly having the issues that she is with her email, with her server, and with Bernie Sanders.
Okay, who else do you see making it far in the GOP side? Do you see Trump making it much farther? I mean,
I've got to tell you, I've talked to a lot of political consultants who are a lot smarter than I am, and university professors and others who have studied this for decades and decades and decades. And all of us are stunned by this with Trump. There are at least 7 or 8 serious gaffes that would have been gaffes for another candidate that he's made at this point, from the McCain commentary to the commentary about women, that would have killed anyone else. So we do see him staying in. We do see, though, however, it's not just his national polling. It's those polls in the places that count. It's in Iowa, it's in New Hampshire, that he's leading the pack in New Hampshire, where average regular folks take it so seriously in New Hampshire. They believe that they have a responsibility as the first primary in the nation, not caucus, but primary. Iowa's first with a caucus. They feel a responsibility as to what they do and how they view these candidates and who they put forth as the nominee of their party. And to see Donald Trump still having the numbers he has, despite what would for anyone else be cataclysmic, is stunning. So yeah, he's going to be there for a while. He's going to have to become a little more substantive by the time of the next debates, for sure.
It's been very controversial up until this point, and I'm wondering if part of the Trump factor is that he's getting people talking about issues that they might not have spoken about before, or gotten engaged in, when we talk about immigration, that really sparked a conversation nationwide,
You've hit it. When we're asking people why Trump, and asking them if they think he could be president. And they're saying, no, I don't think he ultimately will be the president. Well, then what is this then? Why? The guy's not specific on issues. He's a billionaire. What could he possibly have in common with you? What it is there's a huge, quiet group of people out there in America who are feeling that Washington is incredibly broke, that no one's listening to them at all, and they just like Donald Trump being in the face of Washington, in the face of some of the national media, and as he would say, telling it like it is for them is more so, he's saying some of the things that are important to us. We want someone out there saying we're tired of the attempts of the past, tired of the way things have been attempted in the past, and it's time for great change. And a guy like Trump, with all of his bluster and bombacity, it appeals to that middle group of people who are just so angry and so frustrated. Conversely, the same way that Bernie Sanders is. And I'll say this with knowing Bernie Sanders well, knowing some of his key people very, very well, and having friendships with them over the years, the bottom line is Bernie Sanders is a socialist. It is stunning to see the numbers that he's getting. But when you ask people why, they're saying the same thing. He's speaking for me. Economic disparity. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm struggling to stay in the game, keep the kids in college, pay the orthodontist bill, and put gas in the car. And yet, here's this incredibly wealthy Republican billionaire. And this socialist, liberal, democratic guy in the Senate, Sanders, speaking to those same issues and moving the same groups of people, whether they be Republican, Democrat, or Independent.
And if anything, you could just argue that it's raising the bar. It's keeping everyone on their game. It's getting everyone talking, all of the candidates getting honest about what they think about the different issues. So it's sort of brought this to a new level.
And Trump being in has caused the others to have to spend more money. There were the 2 tiers of the Republican Fox debate. In the second tier, Carly Fiorina did exceptionally well. So now she's up in the big tier. Kasich, exceptionally well. So many of the others. Lindsey Graham, a brilliant member of the United States Senate, a fellow who's got a significant resume, whether you like him or don't like him, and yet you'll see him fall off by the wayside before this is over. Ted Cruz, struggling for traction at this point. Marco Rubio, great debate performance, but what it's going to all come down to, all of them, every one of them needs to raise and be able to spend $175,000 a day to stay in this game. For Trump, that's not a problem. And for the Bushes and the Clintons, it's not a problem either.
That's big money we're talking about. What do you think are the big issues? We're going to be talking today about a lot of economic issues. Obviously, money is always something that gets people out to the polls. What else do you think is, ISIS big enough that people are wanting to hear about foreign policy? This Iran deal. What do you think are the big issues that are going to get people out this year?
Those issues are there. The Iran deal, ISIS, fear, general fear overall. But they boil down to something else. The average person can't really grasp. There's so much news, so much information on ISIS, the Middle East, on Russia, on China, and it boils into one category that Trump, of all people, has been able just to tap on, and it's Ronald Reagan territory and Bill Clinton territory. Reagan, who reminded us in that great campaign of his, the first one, there's a bear in the woods. Let's be afraid of it, and I'm the guy to take it on. Clinton did the same thing about the economy and the politics of them. They who have and us who don't. And he made himself part of the us who don't. That fear is there. And it's about the economy. It's about the future. It's about most folks who vote feeling that they are not going to be able to pass on to their children as good of a lifestyle as they had from their parents. That's there in a number beyond what we've ever seen before. This great discontent and fear of the unknown and fear of what we do know. Fear of a Putin, fear of China, fear of Chinese competition to American business. That's huge. we saw so much of that in the crosstabs of these three different big polls over the last 2 weeks. The average regular person saying, I want to feel good about America again. I'm looking for that person, that man or that woman, who's going to make America great again, and then I can follow, Democrat or Republican.
And, you know, we do have another president for another year and a half, and before I let you go, I do just want to find out, what do you think that President Obama will get accomplished over the next year and a half? Is this going to be a big year and a half for him, you think?
It should be. His problem is that anything he tries to do, he's stymied by Congress, by the House, by the Senate, and he has not been able to do enough to build bridges to those Republicans in the House and the Senate. And in that same vein, though, right now, he's got a problem on the Iran deal. When someone as powerful as Chuck Schumer, the United States Senate, says, I'm not going in this route, for whatever reasons Schumer may have, real or, you know, in the heart. The bottom line is the president's not doing well in these regards. And it is very frustrating for him. I think that you'll see in the course of the next week the president talking about that a little bit more and trying to take yet another new direction for himself. A new Obama. You're going to see him be a little bit more frank. You're going to see him be a little bit more direct and being more the Obama who campaigned in 2008 than the fellow who's been in the White House for this amount of time. He has to. He's looking for legacy, and some of these things mean a lot to him that he's trying to achieve and accomplish.
Very good. Tony Signoli, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. You are very busy this time of year. I know this is the time of year you don't sleep, so I appreciate you giving us a bit of your time. Do appreciate it. And next we'll talk about what you need to know before you head to the polls and what voter turnout is going to look like this time around. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about politics, both local and national. We were just talking to political consultant Tony Signoli about the race for president. In just a little bit, we'll talk more about some of the issues that will likely be driving you to the polls: money, the economy, the local housing market, student loans, all of that. Before we get to that, let's talk about the local races and what people need to know before they head to the polls this year. Joining us to talk about that, we have Agawam's Town Clerk, Richard Thoreau. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. So we're talking about all of this excitement and political engagement right now with this political race heating up so early on. You know, we do have preliminaries for this November. Of course, we're not talking about presidential until next year, but we do have races happening right now. Do you think that there is political excitement locally right now?
Well, local races are really where the rubber hits the road. It's where they decide funding for education for your children, how your infrastructure in your community is going to be maintained, and also your local tax rate. In the city of Springfield, they're having a large primary. Mayor Sarno again as a candidate. In the city of Holyoke, there's three candidates, Mr. Sato and Mr. O'Connell and Mr. Morse. And in West Springfield, there's going to be a heated contest, as I see it, with a young attorney for the town of West Springfield, Will Reichout, and Mike Finn, and the former mayor, Mr. Neffinger. So those are going to be contests that really matter, because that's where, as I said, you know, locally where you live, they're going to decide these issues: taxes, education.
So what is good voter turnout right now? What do you hope for on election night? What ends up usually happening? What is good voter turnout locally?
Well, a good voter turnout is beyond 50. Now, obviously, we would like, all of us that run these elections would like everyone to take the opportunity to go out and register, go out and vote. We make it as easy as possible. However, a good past 50 in a local race is good, but it depends on the energy that's generated. In those three races that I just mentioned, I think there's going to be some energy, especially in Holyoke and in West Springfield.
Are there any measures being taken to help more voters get out next year, or this year, or next year? You know, helping people get there, more early registration or early voting. You know, what kind of measures are being taken to encourage more people to vote?
Well, in 2016 for the presidential race, you'll be able to register online. It's something that the Secretary of State, Bill Galvin, and my association, myself, I testified for the bills myself, trying to make it easier in the technology that we have now available for us. You know, I was an advocate of mail-in registration. I'm an advocate of online registration, of course, but I'm also an advocate, which we weren't able to pass through the legislature this session, of same-day registration. You go to the polling place, you have the right information, ID, etc., and you register right there and you vote right there. During the presidential, our numbers go way up. and we have people that haven't answered the census, they're inactive voters, we have to put them back on the rolls and so forth, and then they go away for another 4 years, move out of the community, maybe even move around the community. But the issue is, if we had same day, they could go in with the right information, register again, and vote that same day. You know, the last thing I want to do, and the last thing I ever wanted to do, was turn someone away from the polls and not allow them to vote.
How popular are ballot questions when it comes to this time of year? Do you think that more people are being drawn out to the races in their town? You were mentioning some of the mayoral races. Or do you think that ballot questions are bringing people out? And do you think that there are any interesting ones being under consideration right now? That
well, certainly 2.5 overrides. They're going to raise your taxes for whatever reason, for schools, recreational, extra police, fire, and so forth. They certainly bring out the voters because it's a direct hit for them in the pocketbook. I think locally, though, in some of the races, again, the question over in West Springfield is a change in administrations. Mayor Sullivan is leaving. Whether they move to the mayor that was there previous, that was defeated by Mayor Sullivan, or in Holyoke, there's a third-term situation. Third terms are always very difficult for mayors, continuity and so forth. And Mr. Morris has had some issues in Holyoke. I think that's why he's going to have a strong race against him. In Springfield, I think there's a number of contenders, but Mayor Sarno has done an outrageously good job in the city of Springfield, in my opinion, and I think he'll be handily reelected.
And what about the primary elections? Some of the communities are having primary/preliminary elections. Let's talk about what the difference is between those, and how many people does that ultimately end up bringing out? Those are equally as important races.
They are, and they're very important given the fact that if you don't go down and vote for your candidate at that time, your candidate might not make it for November.
Right.
And the issue today in all these races that I just mentioned, they're nonpartisan, meaning you don't go down and have to pick a Republican or a Democrat. You pick the person that you want, and you don't register in that party for that. A lot of people don't know that the law changed some time ago. So everyone can go down and choose on the local level, because even in the city of Springfield, they don't run as Democrats or Republicans.
So what about deadlines? Is there anything that people should know about when they should be registering? If they want to do absentee, what do some of those deadlines look like for any of these?
In my community, it's September 16th, but in other communities, it depends on when their preliminary is going to be held. In most communities, it's dictated, as it is in mine, by their charter. And so if you want to make sure that you're going to be registered, just call up the election office. If you want a absentee ballot, again, call the election office. Ask how you have to do it. Usually you can either have a form sent to you, pick up a form, or even write a personal letter saying that you would like an absentee ballot application sent to you, or a ballot. The issue here is every commissioner in Massachusetts that I've dealt with in all these years, we want people to participate in the election process. We don't want anyone not to have that right to vote.
What needs to be done, do you think, to garner more interest? Is it the younger voters that need to be, brought into the process? Is it, older people who are disgruntled by politics and just want nothing to do with it? I mean, what do you think can get more people out? Are we just busier and we just don't have time?
Well, certainly the Tuesday voting is something from the past. And in other states, certainly Oregon comes to mind, they have mail-in ballots. They have places that you can drop them off. You can certainly drop them off at the city or town halls in Oregon. Every registered voter gets a ballot. Now, some people might say, well, there's a chance for voter fraud. Well, we mail absentee ballots to homes, and we certainly try to make sure that the person that signed them is the person that signed their voter registration card, but certainly my signature is different when I first registered at 18 than it is today. So it's a little different. A little time went by. And but the issue really is that I think Mr. Signoli mentioned it. People are frustrated. They want to be part of the process. They want politicians to tell them the truth, and that's true on the local level also. This is where it really counts like I said, where you live, what taxes you're going to pay, what schools your children are going to go to, what recreational opportunities are for them. And you have to pick the right candidates right from the get-go. And it's very difficult to be in government today. And for candidates and also for the voters to pick the right person that's going to do the right thing for them and their community.
And speaking of being in government, I know that you have decided that you are going to be leaving the office as clerk in Agawam. This must have been a difficult decision for you. Was it a difficult decision? Talk to us about leaving and where you're going.
It's a very difficult decision. I'm going to be going to the Angelides Law Firm in January in Long Meadow. It was an opportunity that came up. It was, frankly, the third opportunity that I had. I was very honored that Charlie Ryan, the former mayor of Springfield, offered me the clerk's job in Springfield when he was the mayor and the control board. And after I built the senior center with a great committee, the architectural firm Reinhardt Associates offered me a position. It wasn't the right time. This was the third one. The third one, I guess, is the charm. It's an opportunity for me. I'm hoping to stay with the town. You know, I'm going to be a candidate in the fall. For the council, which I served before, because I feel I still have something to offer the community and I want to be part of it. But this job is an opportunity to do some other things, have a little more freedom so I can spend some more time with my family. And my mother's 92 years old, still lives by herself, needs a little more time with her son, and I need a little more time with her.
God bless her, 92.
Yeah, she's in good shape though.
Well, good
so
for
we'll
you.
See.
You've been a very important part of Agawam's fabric in the community, so I know there's a lot of people who are going to miss having you there, but we certainly wish you luck.
Well, I hope so.
Hope you'll come back on InFocus still. I mean, you're
I will.
still a member on here, so I hope we'll still be able to get you on to talk about.
I hope so. And election night, I won't be counting the votes, but maybe I'll have a few counted for me.
There you go. All right, Richard Thoreau, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And after the break, we'll be talking about the economy and how it can affect your personal finances. All these issues bringing you out to the polls. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about the upcoming elections and what you should plan for before you head to the polls. Let's talk about one issue that we'll be hearing a lot about from our candidates, and that's money and the economy. Over the next half hour, we'll talk about tackling student loan debt, whether it's a good time to buy or sell our home, and other money issues. Joining us now, we have Dylan Bond, a financial planner with Bond Financial Services. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
Well, one of the big stories over the last week is that the Fed announcing that it's possible they'll be raising interest rates.
Yep.
So talk to me about this. What would this mean for people, first of all?
Well, the purpose of the Fed and interest rates is to control growth in the economy. So if the Fed thinks that the economy is growing a little bit too fast and that if it does continue to grow at the rate it's on, we could start to see inflation start to increase as well. And obviously with inflation increasing, it will cost more to consume the goods and services that we consume on a day in and day out basis. And for those of us that are on fixed incomes, if the cost of a gallon of milk or you know, the car insurance goes up, it can really affect overall where we're going with that. So if they raise interest rates, they're thinking that the economy is growing a little bit too fast, and they're trying to pull back the growth of the economy by obviously, if interest rates go up, people aren't going to buy as many houses. They're not going to take as many car loans out. It's going to slow the overall economy down by decreasing the amount of money supply that's out there to generate the economy and move it forward.
Okay, so but isn't it a good thing when our economy is growing?
It is.
So how do you grow it at an appropriate speed? You know, I guess that's just, you know.
Right. Well, if it grows too fast and people are consuming too quickly, then there's gonna create some shortages or in supplies, which increases prices along the way, which in turn at the consumer level at the store, when we're buying those items, we're going to have to pay more to get them because there's scarcity in the materials to build them. So I personally don't think that we have to worry too much about interest rates going up in the near term, if at all, this year. I think that right now there's enough issues out there economically that I don't think we're going to have to worry about significant interest rate hikes. I mean, the real key at the home level, I think, is when it comes to interest rates, people are more concerned about making some money on their money. You know, we call it a war on seniors and savers, because when you get older and you get into retirement, you can't afford to take the risk that you could have taken 20 or 30 years earlier. So you rely on fixed income or interest rates at the bank and things like that being at a sustainable level, so you can at least live off the interest. Back in my mom and my grandparents' day, a lot of their financial plans were put the money in the bank and live off the interest, because they were getting 7 or 8% at the time. In order to do that now, you'd need $10 million to earn a reasonable income in retirement at a 0.5% interest. So that's a big issue as well.
Yeah, the interest rate is like non-existent right now.
Yeah.
So how would this impact, you know, borrowers on credit cards? You know, how would it, when they're looking at like their credit card debt right now that they're trying to get down, what would it mean for those people?
I don't think from a credit card standpoint it's gonna be that big of a deal one way or the other. I mean, credit card interest is high.
It is.
And it's revolving credit. Again, we talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks back, and the key to credit cards is managing them properly. And if I'm talking or making a recommendation when it comes to credit card debt, your best bet is don't put anything on that card that you couldn't pay off at the end of the month or at the end of 2 months at the most. If you get into a situation where you keep buying things and adding balances to those credit cards, that high interest rate level, in some cases I've seen as high as 17 to 20% interest on credit cards, it's going to be very hard to get out of the way of the interest payments alone, forget about paying down the principal. So credit cards are more of a convenience to pay your bills, to not have to carry around cash, and maybe to get some points from the credit card companies. But the key to credit card management is paying off your balances at the end of the month.
And so who would this impact the most? Are you thinking that this is home buyers that this would impact the most?
I think home buyers it would impact. I think anybody making a big purchase where they're looking to finance. You know, if you're in the market right now to buy a home, now's a good time, because obviously interest rates cannot stay as low as they have been forever. The flip side of interest rates are the lower they are, the more borrowing that goes on, and then people end up getting themselves in trouble with debt that they can't therefore repay. And if you look back to 2000, when the market took a big crash, the government reduced interest rates extremely low, and a lot of predatory lenders started going out there and talking people into refinancing their houses, taking cash out to build additions and decks and buy boats and cars and everything else. And what ended up happening there was that people went way more out than they should have on debt, got into a position where they couldn't pay that debt back, and then 2008, loans and mortgages started defaulting. People got scared and started wanting their money back from the banks, and that created a huge financial crisis, because what a lot of people don't understand is for every dollar you give the bank on deposit, they really can go out and lend it out 9 times.
Wow.
So there's a lot of leverage there that if people stop repaying that 9 times leverage, and then others pull their deposits out, the bank goes insolvent pretty quickly.
Wow.
So it's a very dangerous, slippery slope that we live on. So
wow.
got to be aware of it.
And you know, it's not just home buyers and people buying cars and things. Students are trying to get an education as well. And we do have someone here who we're going to talk about, you know, financing an education, or you know, borrowing for that. How would this impact students?
Well, you know, as it is, it's already very difficult for somebody to get a 4-year education nowadays. I mean, you know, the average school out there is costing well over $20,000 a year, and it doesn't look to be slowing down. One of the other issues with inflation is that food, energy, healthcare, and things like that are not part of the inflation numbers. So they tend to have the most rapid inflation, but we don't take consideration into how they're affecting the economy. When it comes to student loans, you know, it's a really hard planning decision to make. Do you recommend families go into deep debt to get a 4-year education that when you really look at it, a lot of people coming out of college today with great educations
don't make a lot of money,
or can't find a job.
Right.
So now they're in a position where they owe a ton of money. they're having a lot of trouble finding a job, and it really puts a lot of stress on families, you know, both the parents and the students. I'm a little bit of a believer in student loans are a good tool, financial aid is a good tool, parents helping their children are a good tool, but I think you got to get the kids believing that they have some skin in the game or some responsibility. So, you know, don't tell my kids this, but my plan for them is to make them think they have to pay for it.
Right.
And I'll help them a little bit along the way, and I'll make sure that if they get in trouble, they won't get hurt. But I want them to be, I want them to take ownership of that college process and make sure that they're going in a major that they believe they can succeed in and that they want to succeed in, and that they're going to take some of that financial responsibility.
Right, make a good financial decision when you're looking at the price tag of these schools too.
It's astronomical, and I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit about that later. And I just, having 3 kids of my own, 15,
it's a lot of college.
15, 11, and 7, they're coming quick, and I'm starting to lose consciousness thinking about it.
Any of them entrepreneurs who are just going to skip over and just start off? No.
I'll tell you what, it's a big issue facing a lot of families today.
It is. Yeah, it certainly is. Dylan Bond, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I always appreciate having you on and talking to you about money that's bringing people out to the polls. And after the break, we will talk about, we were just talking about student loan debt, and of course, after that, the real estate market. 2 issues that will definitely get people voting this year. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about the political climate and how your personal finances can be affected by national trends. One issue that gets people talking is money, and one financial issue is student loan debt. It's something a lot of people know a lot about. Every year college students graduate owing sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. Currently, student loan debt stands at over $1 trillion, with 40 million Americans holding some type of student loan. So joining us now to talk about financing your higher education, we have Katie Lynch with us, the Associate Director of Financial Aid at Holyoke Community College. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That's a lot of money and a lot of people owing a lot of money.
It is. It's a growing issue. I mean, it's becoming huge, and students, you know, have a lot of options now. They can go to a community college, and, you know, for a full-time student at Holyoke Community College, it's a little over $4,000 a year to go full-time. But then you get upwards into private schools, and you're looking at above $60,000 price tags. And the career options and the major options vary greatly. So, you know, we have careers in healthcare where you can pretty much know what you're going to make when you get out of school. And then there's, you know, people who go into more of the, like, a humanities kind of background, and they don't know exactly what they want to do. So I think students and families really need to sit down and look realistically at what the cost is, what they can finance through grant and scholarship options, what the student loan debt burden will be, and how easily they can realistically pay that back in the future.
Yeah, are you sort of seeing a change in trend as to what students are going to school for? Are they asking that question? You know, how much am I realistically going to make? And are you seeing the change in the choice of majors? You know, we hear so much about computer technology and hackers, and are you seeing more people going into computer science, you know, because you know, that's an evolving industry.
Sure. I mean, at a community college, you do focus on what the community needs are and the current needs are, and you kind of try to have programs that offer gainful employment when the student gets out of school. So we do have a lot of health careers, and we have some computer science careers, but we also offer a liberal arts education for students looking for that. We do see a lot of students making decisions based on what can they get when they're done with school. We have a lot of students that come back to school because they're looking to advance their career through a further education. So they already are in a career, they just want to get to another level of that career. But there are, you know, with the liberal arts and some of the other schools, you know, students are going in and they don't really know what they want to do, so they're looking for a solid foundation. We're in a changing world now where a lot of students are finding that they have to go on and get master's degrees or doctorates to hit the income levels that they're looking for, to support the lifestyle that they're looking for.
So what do you recommend people do? We're at a point where kids are going back to school. Maybe some of them have already gone down this path and asked these questions. But for some people who are heading into college and haven't done this yet, or they're going to be going to college next year, what questions do you ask? How do you start finding the money that's available? What is out there?
Sure. The first thing would be to talk to the financial aid offices at the schools you're looking at. Most Holyoke does, and most colleges have counselors available to sit down and talk to you. Use the resources available to you online. Look at Department of Labor statistics. What are people making in the careers that you're interested in? And those are realistic earnings. A lot of times I think students see what they think people make, and it might not be what their actual paycheck's going to be.
Right.
But everybody, if you think you may be eligible, talk to somebody in the financial aid office. Even if you don't think you're at all going to be eligible, talk to them. They might be able to point you in the direction of, filling out the FAFSA, which is the federal application for student aid, determining what you're eligible for, and then finding some other resources that might be available beyond those dollars. A lot of private companies offer scholarships. We partner with a company out of Boston called American Student Assistance to offer a scholarship search engine to our students. And those are private scholarships where students might be doing different applications for, but they might be able to get some additional dollars on top of what they're eligible from the state or federal government and the institutions themselves.
And what about the different types of loans? So we do have the federal loans, we do have the private loans. What should you be looking at with those loans? We were just talking about interest rates,
Sure.
and the payback, and if there's some kind of a grace period even, what are some of those?
So the federal loans, which you do have to fill out the FAFSA to see what types of eligibility you have, those are generally speaking the most favorable for students. They have the lowest interest rates. Interest rates currently for the upcoming year in September are going down. They were 4.6% last year, and they'll be 4.29% this year. They are low interest rates with very favorable repayment terms. There is a grace period built in. They have companies that work with students where if you call and you say, I'm out of work and I won't be back in work, there's deferments that you can sign up for that don't negatively impact your credit. So you need to work with the guarantors and the servicers of these loans in repayment, but they are favorable, and they do work with the student because they're trying to establish that skin in the game that Dylan was talking about, and they're trying to build your credit history, and at the same time give you that financial footing. Private loans, they're not all bad. A lot of people think they're all bad. But you have to be really cautious about whether the interest rates are fixed or variable. Are you going to sign up for a loan at a low interest rate and see it skyrocket? For traditional age college students, you're going to need a cosigner for those, especially at the more expensive schools. A private bank is not going to lend a 19-year-old $30,000 a year without a cosigner. So you need somebody with that solid credit history assisting you in getting that loan. So those are the things you want to consider. The private loans generally want the repayment on their terms, where the federal student loans are more willing to work with you.
So many political candidates have been talking about how they want, free education for certain schools and that sort of thing. Do you see, how would that impact some of the schools in our area? Maybe you can talk about your own. And do you see a big change happening? It's obvious that this is a huge cost. Dylan was just on talking about his 3 kids that he has to send through college at some point. Do you see a change happening in this?
I think there's potential for a big change. I mean, obviously, access to education is huge, and it should be available to people. But we're already in a world where we have colleges that cost $4,000 a year and colleges that cost $60,000 a year, and plenty of students are still choosing those $60,000 a year colleges. So it's families having realistic conversations about what they want for their futures and for their children's futures. How much student loan debt is a family willing to take on, and is that worth it for what the student wants to do in the future? So I do think we would certainly, if it was for community colleges, free access to education, we would see an increase, and that would be very welcomed. But I still think families are going to make choices a lot of the times where they still choose colleges for other reasons, and it might be because of their programs they offer, or they're looking for that residential experience.
And does it make a huge difference for students who get jobs while they're taking their courses and try to pay off as they go? For some of these students who are getting jobs to maybe just buy food and the necessary essentials, you know. Does it pay if you are working to pay off the loan, or is it better to just wait until after the 4 years?
Sure, it's important to work with your financial aid office to understand the terms of that loan, because a lot of times the interest is subsidized while you're in school with the federal loan, so it's not accruing while you're in school.
Okay.
But by using your job, and we offer work study a lot, to pay down those costs like food and textbooks and stuff while you're in school, it decreases what you're going to be looking at in repayment when you get out of school.
Very good. Katie Lynch, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you.
It's an issue that impacts a lot of people. It can be very scary. I appreciate you coming on and offering advice.
Great,
Thank you so much. And when we return, we will discuss interest rates and how they may affect the housing industry. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about your finances and the economy. It's the issue that gets people out to the polls. We've been talking about politics. Now, many Americans want to own their own homes, but a report released by the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University shows that the housing recovery is very slow, with home ownership rates falling while demand for rental units is on the rise. We'll find out if that's happening here. Join us now to discuss the housing situation. We have Dawn Henry, president of the Realtor Association of the Pioneer Valley. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for inviting us.
Now, we were hearing that you know, the economy overall is growing at such a rapid pace that's why the Fed is considering this interest rate. What are you seeing? Does that also trickle down to the housing? What are you seeing here?
We're hearing from our national chief economist that the interest rates may rise somewhere between September and October. However, we don't think it's going to impact the housing market as significantly as you might think. Lenders may choose not to increase their interest rates. So right now the rates are still great regardless.
And are people buying homes? What does it look like right now?
Yes, people are buying homes. It's been very busy. At this point, our statewide numbers for July came out that we're 37% ahead of what we were July of last year.
Wow.
So that is a huge number. We are seeing multiple offer situations in several of our counties. And, you know, buyers are out there.
So what is the buying/renting situation? Are more people, is the cost of rentals going up? What are you seeing there?
Yep, we are seeing the cost of rentals going up. It's not so much a supply versus demand issue, more it's what the cost of having the rental is. So for the owners of those properties, the increase in utility costs, insurance, municipal services, those are creating more of the increase in the price versus there's so many people competing for rentals right now.
Okay, so what is making the housing market boom so much? Have people tried to sell their homes and they didn't sell before and now everyone's selling and there's an abundance of supply? What is it?
We actually are still short on inventory.
Really?
Yes. Despite the fact that we are seeing such an increase in sales. So the inventory numbers compared to what we'd like to see as the quote-unquote normal levels is still down. But when houses are priced properly, regardless of condition, location, upgrades, they will sell. There's a buyer for every home. So what we're seeing now is that people are starting to get a little bit more realistic on the pricing. And we have buyers that are a bit more realistic as well on the price. Because our median price has been fairly flat, we're in almost an even market in terms of buyer's market versus seller's market. So that's helping people to come together to be able to agree on buying and selling properties.
So are there more new developments out there right now? Are people moving into the area? What's happening?
New construction is down nationwide. We've talked to the national home builders in our area, and they are seeing that the new construction is more for a custom build, where someone will find a lot they like and they have a house in mind that they want to have constructed. We're not seeing a lot of spec houses. There are some new developments going in, but they're going in slow.
So what do you think is where are we going from here, I guess? Do you see our overall prices going up? Is our economy stable here right now? Where are home prices now compared to where we've been? What does our future look like?
Our prices haven't gone up significantly. We'll see a month where we go up 1% here. Next month we might drop 1% in terms of median price. So that's stable. That's a good thing. It means that people are still doing transactions, and we're not going to run into that housing bubble that we had before. It's been consistent. Out of the last 29 months, we've had an increase in sales. So, in 28 of those months, we've had an increase in sales. So that's good. our interest rates, again, are low. The unemployment rate is low for our area. It's about 6%. So those are all good signs.
And when is a good time to buy?
It's always a good time to buy. If you need to find a house, it's a good time to buy. There's always someone looking to sell. You know, we do, of course, have seasonal changes. So if we have 4 feet of snow again this February, we probably won't be selling a lot of real estate.
Right.
But there will still be people buying. So if you need to move, put your house on the market.
So you were talking about making more realistic choices, and we've been talking about, you know, our financial health and that sort of thing. So how do you make realistic choices financially? Who do you have to talk to, and what are those questions that you need to be asking to really determine what you can handle?
Well, you definitely want to talk to a loan officer and know in your own mind what your budget is that you are comfortable affording. When they run your numbers of what your pre-approval is, they don't take into account that you want to buy a new car in another year. They don't take into account you want to go on vacation. You know, they're looking at what your debts are at that time. So if you're not comfortable with the number that comes back, tell your loan officer, you know, I'm willing to spend $1,200 a month for my house. And then they'll work the numbers backwards for you. Then that will give you your price point. And when you go in, you have to know sometimes you're going to put in sweat equity, which is better than walking into the HGTV house that you don't have to paint or put in countertops. You know, you can customize it to yourself and do it over time.
And how are we, you know, when we talk about major events happening, obviously we have a casino coming into Springfield. We had a tornado a few years back. How do these events impact the housing market, and are we seeing any of that happening right now?
The casino is the big question. It's, you know, the elephant in the room that nobody has the specific answer for. Will it impact housing positively and negatively? Yes. It may go positive for a little while and then hit negative after, or vice versa. You know, we just don't know. You know, and as far as tornado, it was devastating to our area. Luckily, a lot of people have recovered from that. So there are areas that, you know, have, you know, Munson got decimated for, you know, a good chunk of the town. And that's pretty much all been rebuilt. So there's newer homes there now, and, you know, people are working through it.
And I know we heard of a percentage of people leaving, but it didn't necessarily mean that they left Western Massachusetts. It might have just meant that they didn't want to rebuild there and they left. I mean, we didn't see a mass exodus after a tornado. Those aren't common here. So.
No. And I think more of what that was is that people had to leave in order to be able to rebuild. So people who were living in Springfield in that, you know, East Forest Park area or in Six Corners, they had to move out of the area to get housing while they rebuilt. There were no other options. So a lot of those properties have been rebuilt. People have come back. So I think, you know, it was a little spin on what was happening at the time.
Sure.
So.
And do you see any particular area doing much better than another in Western Mass right now?
Not necessarily. You know, real estate is so local that even in a large city like Springfield, you have different dynamics happening in each section of the city, and in the suburbs, same thing. So it's just very local. Always talk to a realtor before you decide to do anything.
Yep, keep it local, and as you said, it's always a good time to buy, and that's great advice.
Absolutely.
Dawn Henry, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us from the Realtors Association of the Pioneer Valley.
You're
great
very
to
welcome.
have you on. And we'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we took a close look at the political climate in our area and across the country. We not only discussed the races, but also some of the issues driving people to the polls. We talked about money, student loans, and the real estate market. That is our program for today. We want to thank our guests for joining us. We want to thank to you at home for watching. And if you've missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website at wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday. We'll see you next week. Take care.